Hey, what's going on, fellas? Dr. Myron Edmonds here, and I want to talk to you today about a subject that I can't stop thinking about. Every time I turn around on the headlines, there's some successful man getting in trouble. So I want to broach the subject today. Why does it seem that successful men seem to get into trouble? All right, so I want to jump in this conversation today because I think this is something that is personal for me, and I know a lot of brothers out there that listen to me are successful men. These are brothers that are educated. These are brothers that own their own businesses. These are brothers that are highly ambitious and that are trying to make moves in their lives. And so they say that you are perfectly equipped to help help the current and former version of yourself. Well, I see myself as a successful person. I see myself as ambitious. I see myself as goal-oriented, hard worker, highly driven, all that stuff. But my personal story is a story of someone who had success as a pastor, was well loved, well liked, popular, had influence, had power, had position, had great wife, great, beautiful family, wonderful children. And I literally almost lost all of that to pornography, almost lost all of that to not being present as a father, lost all of that to my own personal pain and trauma that I basically left undealt with for the majority of my life. And I talk over and over again. If you listen to my videos, the podcast, if you listen to any of my content, I talk over and over again about how we have to win in the things that matter. And in my life, I was not winning in what mattered. I had the public persona of someone that was successful, but privately I was struggling. And I think that I, in many ways, reflect the experience of a lot of men out there. There are a lot of men who are doing well, who are highly successful in their careers, in business, in whatever area they find themselves in. But for whatever reason, they have a struggle simultaneously and almost proportionately that is as great as their success. With all their success, there is something threatening to destroy their success. And for me, it was the pornography. It was as a pastor. It was just being a poor, piss husband. It was just being a father who was physically in the home, but was, emotionally absent. It was me neglecting, my own personal health and healing. And so all of those things, began to catch up with me. And the truth is I could have ended up on the cover of someone's magazine. And so currently right now, I won't go into the story, but there is a hot story that's all over sports media about a football coach, one of the highest paid football coaches in college football, who built a relationship with a rape survivor who built her life on helping sports teams and organizations to essentially, end this cycle of violence against women, rape culture, et cetera. The coach and this woman built a professional relationship. The coach brought this woman to his sports program to talk to his athletes about her experience to do something positive. Short story, as a result of that, they built some kind of, relationship that seems to be under question because he is accused of masturbating on the phone with her, which he admits that he does. And she says that he had no permission to do that. And he says that it was totally consensual. She has filed suit against him and filed suit against the university that he works against, seeking judgment. And he is trying to fight for his career, of which I believe he's worth almost $80 million. And so he is in the process right now of fighting for his career. I understand he's also married. So this is in many respects an act of infidelity. And so I don't know who is right or who's wrong. What I can say is I know that he absolutely positively regrets being in the headlines as someone who was caught in the act of doing something outside of his marriage, something that's against, what his persona represents. And nobody wants that negative press. On the other hand, she's accusing him literally of doing something that is criminal. And so a lot of times, this is kind of that story, and you can look it up yourself. I won't mention any names or headlines. You can Google it yourself. But I bring that up because this is like every time you turn around, you see something like this happening. Now, I'm not saying that guys who are not successful don't do stupid stuff. But I will say this, it seems like guys that are successful have so much more to lose, right? They have so much more to lose. I just saw something recently that said that specifically in the areas of certain addictions, that you are least likely to be addicted to something if you have a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose. So that the more purpose and sense of meaning you have, the better you are prepared to fight addiction. Um, I think there's some connections that can be drawn here that, when these successful men make these bad judgment calls and have these moral falls that are very public, it makes you ask some questions like, doesn't it seem that they have a purpose that's big enough to kind of keep them from doing stupid stuff? Don't they have so much to lose, right? And instead of, screwing it all up by getting caught with some affair or, a DUI or, in some public scandal or some mistake that caused them to lose their family and their reputation. And many times they end up fumbling the bag itself, right? And so I think what I want to, propose to you guys today is I think there is a connection between success and the pressure that success brings and personal problems, right? Everybody has problems. Just because you're successful doesn't mean that you're less likely to have problems. What I want to argue today is typically, sometimes the more successful you are, the least likely you are to have somebody who holds you accountable, because typically the higher you go up, the lonelier you are. Successful people have a lot of pressure on them. They are typically responsible as leaders for other people. And sometimes the pressure is often looking for a way out, right? No pun intended, to relieve the pressure. Sometimes they will, and I know I did, I self-medicated, I numbed out. I was many times looking for a way out, an escape from all the pressure that the responsibilities have with being successful often brings. And so I don't know what your thoughts are about it, but I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments. I think that the more successful you are, I think there is a tendency with success to also have, proportionate to the success, a temptation or a struggle, right, that threatens that success. In other words, just because you're successful doesn't mean that you are without struggles. And a lot of times when people see a successful person, it's almost like we paint them as being better or more moral than the rest of us because they have some position, some title, that they have wealth or whatever. Typically, the greater the gifts, the greater the talents, the greater the influence, there is proportionate to that a struggle. So I want to answer that question right now. I want to answer that question by introducing you to two concepts that both start with a P. All right. And I want all of the brothers to hear this. If you are successful, and I'm talking about successful only in the most minimal sense, I'm talking about you have money, right? You have power, right? You have position, you have influence, you have popularity, you have all of those things, right? Just because you have those things, sometimes there is a temptation when you have those things to oftentimes cause you to neglect the most important things. It takes you so much to get those things, right? And to maintain those things and to go for more of those things. It becomes intoxicating almost, right? And so the more you're going after these things and the more you're trying to maintain these things and the more the pressure that comes with having these things, oftentimes it causes you to neglect the main things. And that's kind of like what I did, honestly. And I'm a pastor. Like, so if you want to call me a hypocrite, you want to call me, like a fraud, I get that. I am a religious and spiritual leader responsible for helping people to get a relationship with God, to be more moral, to be righteous, if you will, to live a holy life, right? That was my job, right? But while that was my job, the pressure of doing that, the gifting that came along with that, being a great speaker, great orator, the influence that I had with that and leading people, and the natural drive I had to want to be good at that and to be successful at that. Listen, it almost set me up to neglect my soul, to neglect my character, to neglect my wife and my children, to neglect pain and trauma that had been built up over the years that was literally positioning me to fumble the bag, if you will. And I use the word bag in a very symbolic sense, representing the success, representing what we have acquired, accumulated, and what we have achieved. I about fumbled that thing because I was so focused on the success aspect, right? The bag itself, that I neglected who I was as a person. I neglected my being. One person said it like this: we have too many men so focused on being human doers instead of being human beings. We're doing, but we don't take time to focus, to strengthen, right? To pay attention to, right? The issues that reflect who we are as men, not what we do, right? And so much of who a man is defined basically on what he does. If you ask a man, to tell you a little bit about himself, the first thing he's going to do is tell you what he does, right? And so we have a bias to achievement. We have a bias to accomplishment. We have a bias to what we do. We have a bias to who we know. We have a bias to how much we have, how much we've acquired, how much we've accumulated. And that bias oftentimes causes us to neglect the most important thing, which are our beliefs, our standards, our values, right? Our soul, right? Our spiritual life, our health, our wellness, our integrity, our families, and being outside of community. And so I want to introduce you to two concepts that both start with a P that I want you to consider today. And I believe they will change your life if you are open to receive it. All right. If you are a successful man, if you are ambitious, right? And you don't even have to have achieved anything yet, but you're on your way, and you got drive, and you got goals, and you got dreams, and you got visions, right? And you got a plan, and you're going after it. Then you better hear what I'm about to tell you right now, because if you don't hear this, then you too are setting yourself up with the pursuit of success and the pursuit of the bag to actually fumble the bag. All right. Now, the first word that I want you to put into your mental toolbox is the word that every man, right? Most of the time, you've never heard this word, right? Taught to you by other men or by other people or by society. But this word is ingrained in you. And this is the word that gets us in trouble. And this is the word that many men base their manhood on. It's the word procurement. All right. Procure. All right. So I'm gonna actually pull it up right now. What does it mean to procure? Right. Many men are driven by this. So the dictionary defines the word procure as to obtain something, especially with care or effort. Right. To procure means to get possession of. Right. It means to, for example, you procure a loan. Right. Or you procured some documents. It means essentially to get something by care or by effort. Now, most men are driven by procurement, right? To go after stuff by effort. The Bible actually talks about this in the book of Genesis. It says after sin, literally, it says that part of the curse on the man was that he would be, in many ways, and I'm just paraphrasing, that he would be a man of the soil. He would be a man of the ground and of labor, right? In many ways, man would spend the majority of his life trying to procure, trying to secure. He lost what he already had, and now he spends the rest of his time in the soil, working his hands, essentially held captive to work. Does that make sense? So, and what's the purpose of work? To have things. We work in order so that we can procure something, so that we can gain possession of something. And so many men are possessed by possessions. They're possessed by this act of going after and procuring, not purpose, but procurement, things, reputation, power, those things, but neglecting the bigger thing, meaning, purpose, character, development, etc. So we go after things, we go after status. All these things make us feel good about ourselves. And in a sense, we're trying to fill a hole that only God can fill. And so we live a life of procurement. If you live that life, you can be very successful. You can make a lot of money. You can have a lot of followers, a lot of influence. You can do very well for yourself. But I promise you, when you live that way and you neglect your soul, then you will, successful men, you will tend to screw up. As a matter of fact, I promise you, you will. You will. Here's a second word that starts with a P that I want to introduce you to. Preserve. Preserve means to maintain something in its original or existing state, right? To keep alive, in existence, make lasting. To preserve means to keep safe. Another word for preserve is to protect. For example, back in the day, in ancient days, they used salt as a preservative. It kept meat from spoiling. There are many men who, because of grind and hustle culture, are driven to procure. I want to encourage you today that it's great to procure. I'm not saying get rid of that. But if you're only a procuring man and you're not a man of preservation and protection, then you are going to lose the very thing that you've been chasing because you have not built a life of preservation and protection. What do you mean by that? A man who operates in preservation, this is not a lazy man. This is not a man that's not doing anything. It's just that he realizes he got to protect the bag from spoiling. So many of us are going after money, but we have no protections around the money that we will make. For example, the illustration I just gave you of this one particular head coach, he stands to lose, and we've seen others lose millions and millions of dollars, athletes and entertainers, and even some of us local brothers, right? Just guys, we're not famous, but we have lost family. We've lost relationships. We have lost resources. We have lost influence. Why? Because we did not set up protections for our character and ourselves so that we wouldn't fumble the bag. We out here procuring, but what are you doing to preserve and to protect all of these assets? That's what I'm here to help you do. And by the way, I want to just tell you right now, if you are a brother that is like that and you need help, you know good and well, if you're honest with yourself like me, you got proportionate to your gifting and to your success. Man, you got some deep struggles. You got some stuff behind the scenes that you are wrestling with. And I want to encourage you. I want to help walk you through some of that stuff. And by sharing this content with you, and what I want you to learn today is you need to set up a system of protection. You need to protect yourself from doing stupid stuff. You need to protect your family from your failings and your faults by getting help. You need to protect your career and your assets and everything that you've worked for by building a life of purpose so that you don't lose sight of what's most important. And the way that you do this is you get wisdom. I love the book of Proverbs because the book of Proverbs is a book full of wisdom. The 31 chapters of the book of Proverbs, and there's just one gem after the other of telling us from a very wise and wealthy man, King Solomon, who was the wisest and probably maybe one of the wealthiest men that ever lived, who also has a story of how he fumbled the bag himself because he could not control his own character flaws and issues, and especially because he loved women and brother was wild. And again, I'm just telling you, I can give you example after example. King David, same thing, very gifted, but had struggles. Moses, very gifted, but had an anger issue, right? Abraham, very, very gifted, called, but what did he have? He had an issue with lying, and he had an issue with courage and telling the truth and stuff. Like I'm telling you, proportionate to whatever you're good at, there is a struggle. And if you don't pay attention to your dark side and build some protections to keep you from screwing it all up, then you will screw it all up. Just don't procure, but preserve. Let me drop a few Proverbs on you before I end this video. I love what Proverbs says here in Proverbs 12:15. It says, the way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice. Like a man that trusts himself, that is wise in his own eyes, the Bible says he is a fool. In other words, he is going to do something stupid. The Bible even talks about pride cometh before destruction. We get real puffed up and proud because of things we've accomplished. And it's almost the beginning of the end when you become proud, when you become puffed up, when can't nobody tell you nothing, when you get too smart to listen to anybody. as you get higher and higher and you have less people that can tell you to shut up, less people that can tell you to veto decisions that you've made, less people to tell you that if relationship is inappropriate, less people to tell, like the higher you go up, you start losing those. And I'm telling you, that's why you need to bring yourself down. I'm not talking about sell all you got, lose all that you worked for. I'm talking about in your mind, in your spirit, be humble, because pride cometh before destruction. Destruction almost had me completely because I had no protection and all I was doing was procuring and chasing and trying to accumulate and trying to be great, trying to be successful. But I had done nothing in terms of preserving and protecting who I was as a person so I wouldn't lose my head in the process of chasing that. Anyway, I hope this is helpful to you guys. Yeah, and I just ask you, like, hey, look, keep sharing this information, and I'll see you next time. All right, peace.